In 2019, a senior partner fired me 11 days before a $140 million deal closed. What happened next is something I've never fully told before, because the part that still gets me isn't the deal. It's the 2 hours I spent in my car, deciding whether to go back inside. There's a certain kind of quiet inside a law firm late at night. Not the quiet of an empty building, the quiet of too much work. Files stacked on desks, cold coffee forgotten beside a keyboard, lights humming above someone who's been sitting so long, they stopped noticing the hum. I know that quite well. My name is Priya Voss. I was 32 when it happened. I was a lawyer at Thomas Mercer LLP, one of the oldest law firms in Auckland, New Zealand. 7 years in. Not yet a partner, but close. People had stopped asking if it would happen, and started asking when. My mother grew up in Tamil Nadu, India. She raised me to never talk over my elders, to treat guests like family, and to understand the word face, not the face in a mirror, but the respect a person builds over a lifetime. The thing they stand to lose when someone embarrasses them in public. Most of my coworkers had never thought about it that way. I grew up living it. That difference, it turned out, would be worth $140 million to the wrong person. My most important client was a man named Suresh Ananthan, founder of Mountaintop Pacific Group. 61 years old, 4 languages, and a business instinct that rivaled most senior lawyers I'd met without a day of law school. He was also the most careful person I had ever known when it came to deciding who to trust. When we first met at a business event, he asked me 3 questions. I don't remember what they were. What I remember is that he wasn't testing my intelligence. He assumed that. He was testing whether I actually listened, whether I could hear what people meant, not just what they said. He called my office the following Tuesday. Over 3 years, I helped him save a $70 million project from a legal dispute that could have destroyed it, closed 2 major deals, and once spent an entire Saturday on the phone with him talking about his reputation. Not legal strategy, but how he wanted people in the industry to see him. The things that mattered, that couldn't be put on a balance sheet. He trusted me because I understood something most lawyers miss. Winning an argument and keeping a relationship aren't always the same thing. The deal I was working on when everything changed was the biggest of my career. Suresh's company was partnering with Perspective Holdings, a Singapore property group, in a $140 million joint venture across multiple countries. I had led every stage. I knew every detail, every risk, every fragile spot. We were 6 weeks from signing. Then Derek Boyle showed up. Derek came in from Sydney as a new senior partner, which meant he arrived with real authority from day one. 50 years old, with the kind of posture that comes from never once doubting yourself. His hiring announcement called him a specialist in high-stakes cross-border commercial strategy. He had 0 experience with South Asian or Southeast Asian clients. He had closed deals in Hong Kong and Melbourne, which he seemed to think was the same thing. His first week, I gave him a 40-page summary of the Suresh deal. Full history, notes on how Suresh communicates, details on what he valued and why. Derek replied in 2 sentences. "Thanks, Priya. Let's find a time to sync." At that meeting, he said, "The Ananthan deal. Walk me through where we actually are." I walked him through everything. He listened the way someone listens when they're already planning what they'll do with the information. When I finished, he said, "I want to be in that client relationship. Not, can I meet the client? Not, how do I support the close? I want to be in that relationship." I told him carefully that Suresh had been explicit. The same lawyer stays on his case from start to finish. It was in the contract, paragraph 14, put there by Suresh himself after a different firm once switched lawyers on him without asking. His exact words to me: "I don't pay for consistency, and then accept a stranger at the finish line." Derek nodded. He wrote something down. I'd find out later that what he wrote was a plan. Over the next 3 weeks, he added himself to my emails with Suresh's team. First as a copy, then as a main recipient. Then one morning, I found an email sent from Derek's address alone, my name nowhere on it, asking Suresh's team for a call about the final deal structure. Suresh hadn't written back. I knocked on Derek's door. He said he was optimizing the partner interface as if Suresh were software. As if 3 years of Saturday phone calls were a legacy system to be deleted. I told him I was worried it would look like I was being removed. He said my concern was understandable, but I was taking a perhaps overly personal view of the client relationship. The tone people use when they mean, "You're being emotional," and emotional people don't belong at this level. He looked at her, and from her point of view, it seemed in a different light. Then he said, "This is the most important account this firm has, and when it comes to a company's $140 million. The approach of sealing a deal based on friendship is a business philosophy I've never subscribed to." His message was clear, but it was incorrect in this instance. I said as much. His response was, "I want to let anything keep this team from closing such a major deal." I said nothing else. As I noticed that point of view he had toward me that had just changed, suddenly it felt that it had changed again, and not in a good way. 11 days before the signing meeting, Derek called me into his office. An HR manager was already there. I had seen that setup enough times to know what it meant. "Structural review," he said. My role overlapped two departments inefficiently. The firm was consolidating. My position was being eliminated. He thanked me for my hard work. The HR manager slid a folder across the desk. I looked at it. Then I looked at Derek, and something broke loose inside me that I had not planned for and couldn't stop. I said, "You don't even know what you have." Not angry, not loud, just quiet and exact, the way something true sounds when you're too tired to dress it up. I said, "Suresh didn't hire this firm. He hired me. And you're about to find that out in the worst possible way. The Perspective Holdings deal runs smoothly," he said, "until you're involved. Something shifts in the room when you're there. Mr. Ananthan's mood changes. His willingness to move forward changes. You don't seem to notice that. And when we've tried to bring you in line with how the rest of the team operates, the pushback we get from you is unlike anything we see from anyone else in this firm." The HR manager looked at her hands. It was clear. Derek was being very specific and very calculated. He was reframing a power grab as a performance issue. Instead of saying, "I want your client and your role," he is saying, "The data shows you're difficult and disruptive." Quote, he is giving the firing a paper trail that protects the firm legally, while personally attacking the two things Priya is most proud of: her method with Suresh and her professional standards. Realizing this, I had a lot more to say, but I stopped myself. I picked up the folder, I stood up, and then, because I am my mother's daughter, and because dignity is the one thing nobody can restructure away from you, I thanked Derek for the notice, shook the HR manager's hand, and walked out. Before we continue the story, if you're enjoying this episode, please take a moment to help our new channel grow by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It would really help us keep bringing you more stories like this. Now back to the story. I made it to my car. I sat there for 2 hours. That's the part I've never talked about publicly. Because it wasn't clean. It wasn't the moment where the wronged professional drives away with quiet confidence. I sat in that parking garage, and I just fell apart for a little while. I cried. I called my mother. I told her what had happened, and she didn't say, "I told you so," or "You'll be fine," or any of the things people say when they don't know what else to offer. She just stayed on the phone with me. Then she said, "Beta, is there any part of you that wants to go back in there?" And I sat with that question. There was. That's the honest answer. There was a part of me that wanted to go back in and take whatever smaller role they offered, just to stay close to the deal. To protect Suresh from what I could see coming. To not feel like I was the one walking away. I sat with my hand on the door handle for a long time. Then I put the car in gear. I called Renfrew Sullivan, a small firm that had approached me 2 weeks earlier, trying to grow their Asia-Pacific practice. Sharp people. Good reputation. They had heard through the professional grapevine that I was someone worth knowing. "Still interested?" "Yes," I said. "Right now." I started the following Monday. The signing meeting was Thursday. Derek flew to that meeting with 2 partners and an associate who'd had my files for 4 days. She was smart and tried hard, but 4 days of reading doesn't give you what 3 years of relationship does. She didn't know that when Suresh asked a question in a certain tone, it wasn't a question. It was a warning. She didn't know that long-term considerations meant he was giving them a chance to prove they understood what he actually valued. She didn't know his silence was the loudest thing in any room. The Thursday dinner was polite and cold. Suresh arrived, greeted everyone perfectly, and asked, calmly, where I was. Derek said there had been some staff changes. Suresh said, "I see." 2 words. The warmth in the room didn't fade. It vanished. By mid-morning Friday, the meeting was quietly falling apart. Suresh's team asked questions that sounded routine, but were actually objections in disguise. Derek answered the surface of each one, confident, precise on the numbers, missing the meaning completely. At 11:40 a.m., Suresh asked for a short break. He didn't come back. At 12:15, his assistant told Derek's team that Mr. Ananthan had been called away urgently and the afternoon would need to be rescheduled. That was the last message Thomas Mercer received from Mountaintop Pacific that day. The next morning at 9:17, a letter arrived from Suresh's legal team. It said, Paragraph 14, Section C of the service contract had not been followed. No written notice. No written consent. Because of this breach, Mountaintop Pacific Group was immediately suspending its relationship with Thomas Mercer, pending resolution. It also noted that Mountaintop Pacific reserved the right to seek repayment of costs already incurred, $140 million. Suspended. By a man who had once told me simply, I just need people to mean what they write. The senior partners held an emergency meeting that afternoon. 2 days later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I answered. It was Derek, not Catherine Halliday, the managing partner. Derek himself, calling me directly. On a Sunday evening, while the deal was still in free fall and the partners were still trying to figure out if it could be saved, he said, Priya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to hear me out. I said nothing. He said they were trying to find a way to bring me back, not as a consultant through proper channels. Just, would I be willing to get on a call with Suresh? Informally, to help smooth things over. He would make sure I was compensated. He would make sure it was handled quietly. He just needed me to make one call. There was a long silence on the line. I thought about Suresh. I thought about what it would mean to him to hear my voice. He would say, Priya, so happy to see you once again, as he always and predictably does. I thought about how easy it would be to say yes, and how much I wanted to, not for Derek's sake, but for Suresh's. Then I thought about every Saturday phone call, every late night, every time I had explained to a room full of people in expensive suits that trust is not a feeling, it is a process. And you cannot shortcut it, and you cannot replace it, and you cannot get it back by making one quiet phone call on a Sunday night because you finally need it. After the pause had gone on for too long, Derek repeated, Priya, we just need you to make one phone call. I said, Derek, you told me I was overly personal. You said I was too emotional to see the client relationship clearly, so I'm going to give you the professional answer. I've started a new role at a competing firm. Any contact with Suresh on your behalf would be a conflict of interest. I can't help you. Priya, he started to say something else. I could hear the desperation he was trying to hide in his voice. I cut him off and I said, I hope you find a way through this. I genuinely do. But it won't be through me. I hung up. I sat very still for a moment. Then I went to bed. Thomas Mercer never closed the Prospective Holdings deal. Suresh's company pulled out 6 weeks later, citing strategic timing, the business world's polite way of agreeing to pretend something never happened. Derek's position was restructured 5 months after that. 4 days after the deal collapsed, Catherine Halliday, the managing partner, finally called me. She asked if I'd come back as a consultant. I explained the conflict of interest with me working with a new firm. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Priya, I want to be honest with you. This was handled badly. I should have been paying closer attention. She didn't have to say that. I've never forgotten it. 14 months after all of it, I got a handwritten card from Derek. He was leaving private practice to start his own advisory firm. He'd been thinking, he wrote, about what the market really needed, about what he hadn't understood, about who might help him build something better. He asked if I'd be willing to meet. I held onto that card for 3 days. When I finally said yes, I met him at a quiet restaurant in Parnell on a Wednesday night. He was already seated when I arrived. No performance this time. Just a man in his early 50s who had watched something fall apart in his hands and spent over a year trying to understand why. He said, I treated your work like a function. I thought of your personal approach as a roadblock, not a business asset. I didn't understand that what you'd built with Suresh couldn't be handed off. There was no faster way to learn that than watching it collapse. I told him I appreciated that. I meant it. We talked for almost 2 hours. The kind of honest conversation only possible after a shared failure when the usual pretending becomes too expensive. We disagreed on some things. We agreed on more than I expected. I found that without the shroud of being the boss was not on his shoulders, he was a very different person. 6 months after that dinner, Renfrew Sullivan merged with Derek's new firm. His experience with international disputes, my Asia-Pacific relationships, 4 partners, a junior team that was genuinely excellent. Our names are on the same door. Suresh Ananthan is one of our first clients. When the merger was announced, he sent a short, formal note. He said he was glad to see that good judgment had found the right home. I've thought a lot about the 2 hours I spent in that parking garage, about my hand on the door handle, about the version of me that almost went back inside. I don't judge her. She wasn't weak. She cared about doing right by a client she had spent 3 years earning. That's not a character flaw. But here's what I know now. Going back would not have saved the deal. It would have only delayed the exact same lesson. The outcome was always going to be the one Derek needed to live through, not the one I could prevent by making myself smaller one more time. You can't protect people from the consequences of underestimating you. Your knowledge has weight. The trust you build slowly cannot be copied into someone else's hands. It lives in the late nights, the Saturday calls, the small moments nobody sees. When someone tells you that you are replaceable, they are not describing you. They are describing the limits of what they can see. And if someone decides you're not worth keeping, don't go back inside. Pick up your bag. Let the clause speak for itself. It always does. If you enjoyed this episode and want to be sure you get notified when the next episode is released, then join our Inner Circle email notification group. Even if the YouTube algorithm fails to notify you, we won't. The link is in the description, along with some extra cash benefits. And yes, those are real bonus perks just for signing up as a free member. Thanks for watching.